Well, good morning. You get to hear me talk today. Yeah. Okay. This is more enthusiasm than I was expecting. Yes, I'm not doing anything wrong. Entirely. Keep me humble. That's right. Well, today I'm going to ask a question right off the bat. Has anyone had a really excellent friend? A really excellent friend. Yeah? Everybody's had one of those? Everybody? Great. That's great. One of the greatest things that we can have in life is friends. And I don't mean the TV show. Even though I do like the TV show. You're just a weirdo if you don't. It's okay, though. You're accepted either way. Sometimes having friends is tough, though. Who do you hang out with? Who's better friends than who? If something happens with one friend and another friend, who do you hang out with? How do you resolve it? What do you do? But there's a very good reason why friendship is one of the biggest tools in a writer's toolbox. Especially when we, take into account media. You watch a movie and there's always the cool best friend, or, the whole drama is about the best friend having an issue and them having to work it out, right? But there's a reason for that. And that's because we are shown in the Word that friendship is extremely important. And so we're going to look at some friends today. The Bible's full of friends, people who were friends. Some were close, some not so. Some were related, and others started out as enemies. We're going to look at a couple today. So the first pair that I'm going to bring up is probably the most, I would expect, the most well-known, and that's David and Jonathan. The book of 1 Samuel tells us about the vital relationship that David and Jonathan, King Saul's son, had. Some friendships take a while to build, right? You get to know the person, find out if spending time with them doesn't give you a headache. But then there's some relationships that you just hit it off right off the bat, right? And that's the case with David and Jonathan. So in 1 Samuel 18, verse 1 to 4, it said, after David had finished talking with Saul, Jonathan became one in the spirit with David, and he loved him as himself. From that day, Saul kept David with him and did not let him return home to his family. And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Pardon me. Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing, gave it to David along with his tunic, and even his sword, his bow, and his belt. This would be really cool if I were to experience this because I really like archery. So, new bow, all right. But good friends not only recognize the strengths and abilities of one another, but they're not afraid to promote one another above the other. Right? So, when David had to go into hiding because Saul decided that he wanted to kill David, Jonathan went out of his way to protect him. He wasn't the only one, but he did. In 1 Samuel 20, verses 41 to 42, Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, for we have sworn friendship with each other, In the same, in the same name of the Lord. Oh my gosh, technology. Go in peace, for we have sworn friendship with each other in this name of the Lord, saying, the Lord is witness between you and me, and between your descendants and my descendants forever. Then David left, and Jonathan went back to town. It's very interesting that the experiment that David and Jonathan did to find out if Saul was really set on killing David. There was an arrow involved, a bow. It's great. Just read it. Read the word. Read your Bibles. This showed, so when Jonathan let David run off and he returned to town, this showed that no matter what life throws at you, your friendship can remain close as long as you tell each other how important you are. Even after Jonathan's death, David remained loyal and concerned about his friend, to the point where he actually wrote a lament and taught it to all the people. We're going to look at just a small piece. So it's in 2 Samuel, chapter 1. The verses I'm going to look at are 25 and 26. It says, how the mighty have fallen in battle. Jonathan lies slain on your heights. I grieve for you, Jonathan, my brother. You were very dear to me. Your love for me was wonderful, more wonderful than that of women. Women are wonderful, but I don't know if this was no, I won't say that. Bros first. Sometimes we choose our friends based on our likes or our dislikes. Sometimes it's a proximity thing. Other times it's a closeness thing. I have friends that I've known for 20 years. They're few and far between now. And I have new friends. The people that you surround yourself with or hang out with should uplift you and call you on your stuff. Yeah, you know where I was going. I lost a very good friend of mine on September 23rd of 2019. His name was Robbie. He and our relationship started out very, very weird. He was my bully. And I was his. I was not a pleasant child. In elementary school, he picked on me because I was very small. I was teeny tiny. If you ever get to meet my mom, you'll understand why. She's like 4'9" and 3/4. It's important. It's important. Because if she finds out I didn't put in that 3/4, she'll get mad at me. But I was very small. I was skinny. I didn't hit 100 pounds until I graduated high school. So I was very small. But I picked on him because he was overweight. He was kind of an outcast. He didn't really fit in anywhere. Knowing that he couldn't actually fight me because I was much, much faster. I may have been small, but I was very quick. When we hit high school, it didn't get much better. We ended up in the same high school as Williams Lake. We only had 3 choices at that point. Now there's only 1. But it got to a point where we decided, okay, it was time to throw down. You know, we matured, hormones kicked in, all that kind of stuff. We were going to fight. We were tough. Keep in mind, I'm still not 100 pounds. I'm barely 5 feet. So he knew that he couldn't actually fight me. And he went for the one move that he knew he had in his arsenal that would be guaranteed to succeed. And there was a cheap shot. If you know, you know. After the fallout of that, I began to recognize that we weren't actually all that different. I became a Christian shortly after that, and my heart began to transform. I learned how to control my anger, keep my tongue civil most of the time. And I began to rely on God a little bit more. As the years went on, we stayed in touch, and after we graduated high school, I went off to Bible college. He stuck around Williams Lake. And then I came home for the summer and was looking for a place to live, and found a place with a buddy of mine and my brother. 3 guys crammed into a tiny 2-bedroom apartment. It was great. But his family home actually burnt down that summer. It was a big thing. Couldn't have changed. There was nothing that could have been done. So he and his family became homeless. They had insurance, so they had to wait for all that. Anybody who's had to deal with insurance knows it takes quite a bit of time. But rather than live in a hotel room with his mom and his dad, he actually moved in with us. So it became 4 adolescent men in a 2-bedroom apartment. Yeah, it was great. It was close quarters, but we made it through. After, I think it was about a year or two, he and his family moved down to Tumbler Ridge. Or not Tumbler Ridge, sorry, not down to Tumbler Ridge, it's down to Maple Ridge. And we didn't get to see each other quite as much, but we stayed in contact. He would call me, I would call him, check in once or twice a month kind of thing, just make sure everybody's okay. He would call me almost every month. And after he came to my wedding, we moved down to Kamloops. I think we were in Kamloops 2 years. 2 years. Wait. Maybe it was more. Anyways, we were in Kamloops at this point. And I had a phone call from another friend of ours telling me he had passed away. My initial reaction to trauma is problem solve, fix everything. So I called his mom, got the list of people that she figured I would have contact with, that he would want at his funeral. We went to his funeral, and it was very cool funeral. He started getting into jiu-jitsu quite a bit, so the actual celebration of life was actually held in the dojo. It was very cool. But I got to talk to his mom afterwards, and she told me this. He talked about you often, and he held you in very high regard. You were a good friend to him, and I thank you for that. It's hard for a parent to lose a child. I can't even imagine. But to hear that parent tell their friend that they were in high regard and to say thank you for being his friend, it hurts too, because you lost a brother. I miss my friend. I miss his calls asking me for advice on girls, because clearly I know everything. I struggle because I never got to know if he accepted Christ. We were friends for 20 plus years. And for that 20 plus years, I was a Christian for, I don't know, maybe 10 of them at that point. He knew. He'd come to youth events. He would talk to the pastors. He would listen to worship music once in a while when he had no choice because I was listening to it. I don't know if I will ever get to see him in heaven. It's been 4+ years since he passed away. And not a day goes by that I don't think of him. I still get a message from his mom every once in a while. And I message her just to check in, see how things are going. It's important that we recognize just what the gift of friendship is. We're going to talk about another pair. This one's also pretty common. It's Elijah and Elisha. Sometimes relationships or friendships can be built with someone who started out as a teacher. Elijah and Elisha are that example. Elijah had been a prophet for quite a while, and the pressure was getting to him. The threat of death might get to anybody. He was hiding in the mountains from King Ahab, who wanted him dead, but God calls the prophet back into the game and tells him to anoint Elisha as his successor. While doing my research for this, I ran into some issues, and Pastor Lance and Crystal and I had a good theological discussion this week. In 1 Kings 19, verses 15 and 16, the Lord said to him, "Go back the way you came and go to the desert of Damascus. When you get there, anoint Hazael, king over Aram. Also anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel. And anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, from Abel Meholah, to succeed you as prophet." Normally Victor's there and I can look at him. Am I announcing this right? To succeed you as prophet. Even at his lowest point, Elijah experiences God in a very real way and does what he is told and anoints Elisha, saying, "What have I done to you?" Which is just down the list there. It's in 1 Kings 19, 20. So Elisha went from here and found Elisha, son of Shaphat. He was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen, and he himself was driving the 12th pair. Elijah went up to him, threw his cloak around him. Elisha then left his oxen and ran after Elijah. "Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye," he said, "and then I will come with you." "Go back," Elijah replied. "What have I done to you?" Elijah recognizes that he's in a tough profession. He's already had his life threatened. He's currently having his life threatened. He's put some false prophets in their place. It's not easy to be a prophet. But from that point onward, Elisha becomes Elijah's shadow. He followed the elder prophet and learned everything he could from him. Even when Elijah's time was coming to an end, and it was time for Elisha to focus on life without his mentor, he still refused to leave the prophet's side. In the Word. Oh, I don't have it. That's fine. It says, when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way to Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here. The Lord has sent me to Bethel." But Elisha said, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. The company of the prophets at Bethel came out to Elisha and asked, "Do you know that the Lord is going to take your master away from you today?" "Yes, I know," Elisha replied, "so be quiet." I like that. Be quiet. Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, Elisha. The Lord has sent me to Jericho." And he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So they went to Jericho. The company of prophets at Jericho went up to Elisha and asked him, "Do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" "Yes, I know," he replied, "so be quiet." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here. The Lord has sent me to the Jordan." And he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So the two of them walked on. It's hard to imagine the stubbornness of both Elisha and the prophets, the company of prophets. Because they're like, we know what's going on. And he's like, "No, it's not. Shut up." But God often puts people in our paths that we can learn from and eventually become friends with. Just as he did with Elijah and Elisha. The friendship provided by God may not even have anything to do with similar interests, and you may not even be in the same age bracket. Although we don't know specifics, Elijah might have been in his 30s, and Elisha could have only been in his mid-teens when they first met. We don't actually know. The Bible doesn't tell us. But God had a plan and a friendship in mind so that his plan could be carried out. And that's what Elisha did. Not only did he carry out God's plan, but he wore Elijah's cloak for the 50 years of his ministry after the fact. God puts teachers in our path not only to help us grow in our faith and our knowledge, but also to give us someone to rely upon when things get tough. Most of you know that when I started my walk with Jesus, Jason was a big part of it. To this day, when we're struggling with something, we call each other. Each of us knows that we have each other's back. The information that we share between the two of us stays between the two of us, unless otherwise specified. We did not necessarily start with people with similar interests. We had similar interests, but they weren't known at the time. Jason started out as my teacher. Well, that came after. which I'm just going to say, we won, Vancouver didn't. I mean, shocker. Your teachers can sometimes have an unexpected impact in your life. We have another pair that is also pretty well known, and that's Ruth and Naomi. Sometimes friendships are born out of tragedy. Ruth and Naomi were this example. While Naomi struggles with her own heartbreak, she thinks of her newly widowed daughters-in-law. In Ruth chapter 1, verses 3 and 5, it says, "Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah." Thank you. My brain, when I was writing this, was like, don't say Oprah. Orpah and the other Ruth. They had lived there about 10 years. Both Mahlon and Chilion also died. And Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. Though Naomi had had a husband and 2 sons die, putting her in a rough spot with nowhere to go, she had no money, she had no family, she still tried to do the right thing by her daughters-in-law. Trying to send them home to their respective families, she wanted the best for them and to give them an opportunity at a new life. In Ruth 1, 11 and 13, it says, "But Naomi said, 'Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters, it is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me.'" Naomi doesn't have anything to offer these 2 women. And it would be better if they returned home to their families, where there was a chance that they could find another spouse, maybe have some kids of their own. But Ruth wouldn't hear of it. In verses 14 and 18, "As they wept aloud again, then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. 'Look,' said Naomi, 'your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her.' But Ruth replied, 'Don't urge me to leave you or turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, even if death separates you and me.' When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her." I might, in my brain, see a woman throwing a temper tantrum. "I'm not going nowhere." We don't know how Ruth's husband died, but it tied her heart to Naomi. Not only did it help her to understand Naomi's pain, but it helped them to bond over the experience. Tragedies strike when we least expect them, but sometimes close relationships can be forged in the pain of a shared experience. And loyalty can be made stronger through a dedication to see the other through the hard times. We could talk all day about other friends within the Bible. We had Job and his friends, Paul and Timothy, Timothy and Epaphroditus, Jesus and the disciples. The thing that remains is that while we feel like we can do things alone, even serving God, we can't. We're told this in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 and 10. Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has no other to lift him. Friendship is essential to help us get through life. A friend helps when life is difficult, but when you're alone, it is significantly harder, if not impossible, to recover. I have friends all over the place. When you work in ministry, especially camp ministry, that becomes the case. From Williams Lake to Chemainus to Tumber Ridge, from Canada to Brazil to Australia. Not all of them are as close as my best friends, but I know that if I need to call on them for a place to crash, some direction, they'll answer. Because in Proverbs 17, verse 17, it says, "A friend loves at all times." Friendship is an amazing gift from God. In John 15, 12 to 17, Jesus gives us this plain and simple while talking to his disciples. "My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you, and appointed you that you might go and bear the fruit that will last, so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. This is my command: love each other."